Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the Álvaro de Bazán. I'm sorry about the pronunciation there, but this ship has been buffed, and since I'm going over the coal destroyers in 2024 here, it's nice that I waited. We're kind of in the second half of 24. It's been a little bit of time to wait for these ones, but I'm glad we've waited because this ship got buffed this patch, and the increased accuracy while you're using this alternative burst fire is going to be really nice into some of these destroyer engagements here. We do take quite a bit of damage back from a single Mogador salvo, mind you, but this burst fire is very, very powerful. It allows you to condense so much damage into a very short period of time. Here's a great example of using it against a battleship. We're about to go behind an island, we're not going to have any more spotting, but we get to use it to gain a lot of damage output, and we can even get a fire out of it. It's very, very useful. Mogador is coming out here to potentially deal with us, and overall, French Reload Booster is a better version of a burst fire in my opinion. Except for this scenario, where we get to deal with a Mogador or a French DD that is on low enough health where our burst is going to kill him. The problem with the Spanish bursts is they slightly or somewhat impact your DPM. The French Reload Booster adds to your DPM, it makes it better. Here, it makes it slightly worse. Although it's very, very condensed, that amount of alpha damage. It does reload much quicker. The burst damage is much faster than the French Reload Booster. So it depends what you're doing. In this case, it was very, very nice. But if you're trying to farm battleships, for example, let's say a Sovietsky Soyuz is in front of you who's just damage controlled. We see those little lights on his ship, means he's damage controlled, and we want to relight him on a fire. This is where a French Reload Booster is much better. So here I'm going to use my burst, he goes dark, to try and relight that permanent fire. So here it's going to work out. I mean, the Soyuz gets spotted again, and we do get that fire, but notice that we lose out on a little bit of DPM. And generally for a farming ship, an HE farming ship, you don't want to give up DPM. And that's why that French Reload Booster is so nice on HE farming ships, including the Kleber and the DDs, as well as Henry. Very, very good booster there. We can also see that in the dockyard ship this month, where we get to see the Okendo there getting a little bit better accuracy, actually much better accuracy on its main guns as its funny button, and it massively reduces the reload, and I found myself really not wanting to run it. So I use damage controls again, and again I'm going to try and burst to get that fire, perhaps a little bit greedy, and I think it's barely going to work out here, but it's a little bit awkward if you should be using this burst fire or not. It's very easy to know into destroyers, I think. Assuming you can kill them with the burst, it's always going to be better to use the burst. If you're going to disappear in smoke or someone else is going to disappear in smoke, it's always just better to use the burst. If you're going behind an island or they're about to go behind an island, it's always better to use the burst. It's really in these open water farming situations where it might not be as good idea to be burst firing someone. As well as if the target just has a lot of HP. Even if it's a destroyer with a lot of HP, typically you're just going to use the sustained DPM. And speaking of the sustained DPM here, we do have all right DPM. The HE DPM here is going to be 170,000. It's not bad. It's about middle of the pack for tier 10 destroyers. And considering how much range we get, that's actually pretty good. This ship, of course, having very nice range, does not have the best shell velocity. Of the ships that have, I guess, 30 millimeters plus, you know, you're looking at Kleber's, Kaba, Álvaro here, you're looking at even ships like the Gdansk, having 139 millimeter guns there. This ship has some of the worst shell velocity of these higher caliber destroyers. So I found myself having a tougher time leading targets at range compared to things like the Kaba or the Kleber, for example. It's not too bad to do it, but it's a little bit more challenging. The other problem being the ship is large. It does not have any armor plating like a Kaba, and it does not have any special saturation gimmicks like the Kleber. No heal like a Kaba can get either. So you're a little bit squishy, actually. I found myself getting a little bit low on HP early on. This game, though, I mean, I might eat a torpedo, so we'll see that low HP. You know, there's a bit of a skill issue sometimes for me there. But it's a big, somewhat clumsy ship. The rudder shift isn't too bad. The turning radius isn't too bad. It's just a big ship, though. So you do have to be aware that you're going to be taking more damage. This HP pool looks incredibly powerful when combined with the concealment as well. It's like 6.2 kilometer detect at its best. And that's very, very strong with this burst fire. So if you're taking short engagements where you know you can go dark or not be under sustained fire, this ship is going to win a ton of destroyer engagements just by the value of this burst fire alone. But it's hard to set up those situations. And there are times where the ship might just be better off farming from a little bit safer positions, early on especially. I had an alright time with this ship, but I will say it was a bit of a pain to play because of the matchmaker. That's always going to be a difficult pain point for destroyers, and it just so happened that when I was playing this one, I'm trying not to hold it against this ship, by the way, because this is something that any destroyer is really going to struggle with. But most of my games were super ships or, more worryingly, carrier games. They're very, very difficult to deal with. Not only is the spotting difficult and annoying, where you have a ship here with very good burst potential that wants to sneak up on people. It doesn't necessarily want to do this sustained open water farming kind of a deal. You're going to get more value when you're taking advantage of this special gimmicks here, given that burst fire. So I think with this ship, you're going to have a good time unless you run into carriers that are on your side focusing you or even just spotting you, since again it is a large ship and it can take quite a bit of damage. I mean, I'm like, why am I eating these torpedoes? Like, do you see how long ago I spotted them? I even turned my camera to look at them. Yep, I ate that Torp, man. I can't believe it, but I did. We should go deal with this Shimakaze in the middle, though. And that's something that the Álvaro can do that I guess the Kaba and Kleber are a little bit worse at, thanks to their much, much worse concealment. Álvaro's reasonably quick, too. It's got like a base speed of 40 knots, although the engine boost is not improved at all. So you're not going too fast with that engine boost. It's like a regular 8% engine boost. So you're not getting up into the close to 50 or 50 knots plus with this ship. It's still reasonably quick, though. Main here just kind of hanging out in the back line, and farming these battleships isn't so bad when they're stationary. And even when they're maneuvering, it's not too bad. Some of these super battleships or even tier 10 battleships are very, very large. It's when we're trying to deal damage to destroyers at longer ranges that I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult. But farming battleships isn't too bad. Our fire chance is also quite good at 9% to be exact, and it means that we have around 8%, or sorry, 8 fires per minute is kind of a stat there, is how many fires are you going to get on average per minute, just pure farming people. And it means we're all right at lighting fires, nothing terribly special. The best ships at this tier are around 10, 11 fires per minute. You know, things like Gdansk, Smolensk, Vampire 2 we looked at a little earlier, Daring, Sherman. So much better at lighting fires, although a lot of those ships do have worse shell velocity and they don't have this burst fire. So you can do this sustained HE damage farming, and in this game it's actually going to be very, very powerful here. We're going to get a lot of damage here. But I found myself getting the best value out of this ship when I could do that bursting destroyer engagement without taking too much damage early on. That's the key. This ship can take a lot of damage early. It's not going to be terribly easy to play, I don't think, because of that. It's just, you get the HP you have at the beginning of the game, and that is it. There's no gimmick that's special that's going to help this ship stay alive. So maybe playing a little bit more passive, being a second line destroyer, can be a very, very good thing. So if you have, you know, in this game, let's say we have a gearing around. If we follow a gearing like half a kilometer behind him, and let the gearing do that initial spotting for us, and we're that backup damage punching power, the ship's going to excel at that. It's also going to be very good anytime you can use these smokes, which are just standard smokes, but just to have them on a ship with decent enough range is going to allow us to put in a decent amount of HE pressure. The AP here is really not that amazing. Like, it's fine, but it doesn't have any sort of special pen, so at 10 kilometers, for example, you have 86 millimeters of pen. that's fine, but it's not really enough to be really going after light cruisers and going for Citadel burst dev strikes or anything like that. Maybe at really close range you can do it, certainly, but there's no improved pen angles here either, so something to be aware of. You're typically just going to be spamming high explosive out of this ship and trying for some of those fires. Haven't mentioned them yet, but we should talk about the torpedoes as well. You really don't have the best torpedoes at this tier. Only having 8, you know, a lot of DDs have 10 at this tier, right? They get 2 launchers, 5 each, whereas this one only gets 4 torps per launcher, so not the best there, but 13.5 kilometers of range is nice. It's rather comfortable. Often I will praise torp boats that have that ability to torp from outside of radar range. That makes things more comfortable to play. At high tier, you can die rather quickly into some of those radars, and I'll show you an example of that a little bit later. But only 13,900 damage per torp is not great. And the real problem here also is 56 knots speed. So they're very slow zoning torps that do mediocre damage in my opinion. So any sort of building for the torps is not going to perform all that well. I think you really do just want to focus on the guns here, and that burst does allow you to have some very, very nice battle impact, especially when people aren't expecting it. Here's a good example of a Hanover going behind an island. We can just guarantee a little bit of extra damage into him before he gets behind cover. It's really, really nice to have. I don't think you should be bursting all the time though. Speaking of the torps though, real quick, they did get slightly buffed as well alongside this burst fire 10% accuracy buff. The torps now have a 1 kilometer detectability instead of 1.1 kilometers. So a minor buff there, but it does mean you're going to land a few more torpedoes. People aren't going to be able to spot them quite as easily, so you may hit a few more. The AA is abysmal. I didn't want to make this video completely complaining about carriers, but I had a bad time with the dealing with carriers, man. So the AA is useless. You need to be around your teammates or just smoke up anytime you see a carrier. It's a large ship, guys, so anytime a carrier's coming after you, it's a lot harder to dodge the incoming damage from that carrier as well. So watch out. You got to be very, very careful here as well. And consumables-wise, again, it's basically a standard smoke, a standard engine boost. There's nothing terribly special here, where a lot of the other ships that this might be competing against have a few more gimmicks there. The gimmick on this ship really comes down to this burst fire, which is quite good. Notice our third turret there, the in the back, is 360 degrees. It does help us be a little bit more flexible. Imagine if I didn't eat that torp that was spotted for like 5 minutes before I ate it. How much HP would we have in this game? We're gonna still make it work. You can make it work on low HP, you just gotta play a little bit more careful around some of these islands. Very nice to see a game coming down to the wire though, eh? Not every match was like that. In fact, this was the closest match I believe we had while playing this one. It was really just blowouts, super ships, and carriers galore. But I had like 2 good games, I would say. 2.5 maybe, and that's the ones you're going to see here. Unfortunately, our Napoli did go down, and our Hanover, well, pushing in and taking out that Pomeranian for us, very nice, does go down to the Kleber Torps. I'm trying to get a little bit of chip damage in here, because I know I'm going to have to deal with this Kleber on such low HP, and yeah, it's very difficult to hit. But here, I've been talking up the Kleber, I've been talking up the Kaba. Look at this concealment advantage we have. It's so powerful. If you're a good destroyer player who can play around concealment and outspotting targets, taking the appropriate time to deal the damage out of this ship, it's super strong. It's really, really powerful. I'm hoping here that my gearing can get some damage in. Ideally, as I mentioned earlier, the gearing would be next to me or close enough that he's the one spotting the Kleber, and maybe I could get some damage in from a smoke screen, right? We have 1 smoke screen left here. But I'm not going to open up here at longer range. I'm going to wait for the Kleber to commit to something. And even if the gearing wasn't near me, you know, if he would open up from his side, maybe get spotted, he's on full HP. He can take some salvos. I cannot. If he was spotting, though, the Kleber maybe... Okay, here we go. He shoots. Kleber should turn his focus over to the gearing. And that means I have an opportunity here to shoot without the Kleber being able to fire back at me. And I smoke up to try and save myself and do some damage, but the gearing was behind the island. Oh no. He gets some spotting for us again, but now the Kleber knows where I'm at, and he knows the HP that I'm on. So since this Kleber seems to be a good player, he's already got a Kraken, he's been carrying his team in this one, I'm very worried about the blind fire. So even though I probably should, in hindsight, have bursted here, I was hoping he would turn his attention to the gearing again, and then I could actually get some damage into him without being worried about the blind fire just instantly killing me. Very difficult to know what to do, but here I know my gearing's not going to be that helpful, so I need to go out and burst fire. And he's on low enough HP that we should just trade here very easily. And we do. So we get a win there, barely. That enemy Kleber did as much as he possibly could to win that game for his team, though. And we barely got the win. Very scary to deal with a Kleber, since that shell velocity advantage is quite powerful, as well as that saturation on his ship, helping him stay alive at lower HP. Faster, dodges better, smaller ship too, actually. Alvaro's got some weaknesses, but it can do well thanks to its concealment and this burst. All right, San Martin pushing for us, and with a radar, Torps coming through, barely going to dodge those. I couldn't believe that I actually dodged that. I was sure I was eating torpedoes there. There's also a Harugumo here, Annapolis on our broadside as well, and a Marceau. So we're going to eat a lot of damage here. This is a situation where you don't burst fire, you just try and get out alive, and it's very unlikely we do. But hey, we try. We will try. But this is where being a little bit bigger than most DDs at this tier is coming back to bite us. We lose, like, basically half of our HP here. We're doing some spotting, though. You know, we got nearly 50k spotting, but the damage output is a little bit low in this one. My teammates are a little bit far back, and I, to be fair, should have been playing a little bit more cautious. It's hard to know, though, that there's just going to be a San Martin that's full sending in the middle of the map. But to be fair, hey, that's a good play when it catches people off guard. We do like that. He gets another radar, of course. Martin's able to shorten its consumable cooldown by like 80% if it's got enough target hits, and those combat instructions are quite good. But we're able to get out of there. So we're on 13,000 HP. Not great. We haven't done any damage. And a full health Harugumo comes around the corner. We burst fire, so we're going to get a lot of damage into him here. And I smoke. So if you're running into trouble against some of these gunboat DDs who are either just stronger than you, or they just have way more health than you, this is an opportunity, or a way you can play it. You can smoke, use your burst fire while you're both spotted, and then go dark. I was very worried about the blind fire, though, that the Harugumo could have just continued to blind fire me and maybe killed me there. But, so that's something you do have to be a little careful of. Again, it's a large destroyer. Random Torps there do manage to get the Martin. You still should throw them out. The long range, sure, they're slow, but hey, every once in a while you're going to get a couple of hits. Harugumo coming in yet again, and this time we got some backup. We got a Yoshino around who should help us, but look at the HE damage we're going to get here. This ship, while it takes a lot of damage, it can deal quite a bit as well. That was over 4,000 damage from one salvo. Missed the next one, basically, but we do get a Yoshino salvo to help us, and then the burst finishes him off. We managed to live. Just barely. And now we got to play very careful, but we've already done nearly 100k in spotting for our team. Sometimes that's the right thing to do. And coming out here to just farm this Kremlin. Notice the HE damage we're going to get, especially in his unsaturated superstructure. It's very, very strong. And I importantly waited to smoke until I knew I was past where the Yamato would still have line of sight on this Kremlin. Anytime you're in a DD and you're trying to smoke up and farm out of it, make sure someone else is spotting for you. I do this myself sometimes, where I try to smoke up and farm a battleship who's used a damage control or something, or someone who's pushing in, and I then smoke, and then they go dark. And I realize, wait a minute, I was the one spotting, and now this is a wasted smoke. And now my teammates can't shoot anymore either. So something to be aware of, always think about who is keeping that target lit for you. But look at the damage we're able to pile on here into this Kremlin rather quickly. And again, not using that burst. It's really just that sustained DPM. Of course, we're almost maxing out our adrenaline rush here. Which, you know, is going to be helping us make this ship look a little bit better when it comes to the DPM. But still, it's not too bad. And I overall think Alvaro is Okay, I've tried to present the strengths here of this ship in this video because there are certainly some strengths. But in general, I think this is a mid-tier gunboat at tier 10. I think the guns are fine to a little bit unwieldy since they don't have the best shell velocity. I think the burst fire is really cool, but not always going to be the most valuable thing. Sometimes you'll burst and then you got a long reload to wait for. A reload booster on a French ship is just better in more situations, even if this reload booster, these not combat instructions, wow, this F key to burst fire is stronger in very specific niche circumstances. I think that French reload booster is going to be a little better overall. And just to mention, we did actually get 70k or over 70k on the Kremlin there in such a short period of time. Damage is not too bad. But back to this ship though, that reload booster is really good on those French DDs. And I'm comparing it to French DDs because it's all about the main guns on both of these ships, French DDs as well as Álvaro. And they both have higher caliber guns with good range. They can farm reasonably well. They both have some type of reload booster or burst fire to deal more damage in a more condensed period of time. They both have decent fire chance for farming. They both are reasonably fast. You know, Álvaro here getting to 42. French DDs are much faster. This one's got better concealment. So if you're worried about concealment on French DDs, but you want to do some gunboating, hey, Álvaro can be a good option to play around islands more, to play in smoke more. But if you're wanting that open water experience, Kleber is just better. It's a smaller ship. It's going to take less damage, especially over time, right? As a Kleber gets low, it's going to stay alive a lot more than an Álvaro can because this ship is just large and does not have any special saturation gimmicks. It also does not have any armor or healing when we compare it to something like the Kaba, for example. Notice Kaba is a bit smaller, as well as having 50 millimeters plating here and there. So you're gonna have to worry about taking damage a lot in this ship. I found that it was a little bit squishier than a lot of the other gunboat DDs that I'm used to. And because of that, it's going to be a little bit harder to play. As for the builds that I was running this one most of the time, still going for guns, actually giving up Superintendent. This could be a way to help the survivability as well. Maybe give up Main Batter and AA Specialist. A little bit worse DPM, but then you can use your smokes a little bit sooner in matches and help keep yourself alive earlier on in games. And the more HP you have in the late game, the easier matches are going to be for you. You really do need Survivability Expert to help you stay alive. Last Stand is a must. Anytime you get hit, it seems like your engine or rudder is always going out. Again, for preventative maintenance is a similar idea. Grease the gears, because the turrets are actually a little bit slow here. So we do want to be taking that. And then I was really liking the full conceal build. I did try the Fearless Brawler and then ran into a couple carrier games in a row, so it was kind of miserable. That one can work too. Just don't queue into carriers with that build, all right, guys? It's that easy. Just decide not to fight against carriers. As for the upgrades on the ship, yeah, we're still going with propulsion mod, as we do need that to help us avoid incoming damage. Even took engine boost mod here. It's not a fancy engine boost that's going to be like 20% or even 30% on some of these DDs. 8% though is fine. It's a decent boost. The smoke here is basically your lifeline. The concealment plus this smoke is how you're going to survive in this ship. This burst fire though, being 10% better dispersion while you're using it, is very nice. Guaranteeing that damage in more often on those destroyers is really, really powerful. This gimmick is quite strong. I don't want to understate that, but the rest of the ship is a little bit too compromised for me. So if you can take advantage of that gimmick, you're going to have a great time. But if you're just looking for a general purpose gunboat DD for random battles, I think there's some better options in these coal ships. So we're going to be looking at those soon enough. But for now, that is going to do it for the Álvaro here in 2024. It's interesting. Don't get me wrong. It is interesting. And I do like it for that. It's a unique ship, but a little compromised. A little bit hard to stay alive at times in this ship. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.